All right, friends, welcome back to our last week in the book of Hebrews. I am coming to you from my office today because big storms blew through Dallas last night. If you're in Dallas, you know about that, or early this morning rather. And our internet is down here at the church. So if you've been with our Bible studies for a long time, this will feel familiar. It's kind of old school here. So beginning of Hebrews chapter 12 today. And we'll look at three major kind of movements in this chapter. The first will be a recap of some of the things we talked about in my sermon on Sunday in Cornerstone, but I know not everybody's part of Cornerstone, so I'm going to recap that just a bit. Then two brand new things for everybody. Okay, verse 1 of chapter 12 is one of those iconic verses. Therefore, since we are surrounded by so great a cloud of witnesses, let us also lay aside every weight and sin which clings so closely, and let us run with endurance the race that is set before us. Picture your life like a race. And it's a race where you want to run and you want to run hard. There's a cloud of witnesses. This is referencing back to the people who lived by faith in the previous chapter that the author talked about. It's as if they are around us, cheering us on. They live by faith. They're cheering us on that we might live by faith also. We want to get rid of that sin that clings to us. This is a good way to think about sin. It's that stuff that slows us down, that hinders us, that has us walking with a limp, that we aren't able to fully run. If we haven't been healed of and forgiven of our harboring of anger, we can't fully run that race. It's not something that we can throw off on our own. It's what Jesus that he can take from us, but we got to cooperate in that. We want to throw off that sin that we might be able to run. If you're looking for a little inspiration, a little motivation, keep reading. What we're doing is we're looking to Jesus. He's the founder and perfecter of our faith. Then getting into some stuff we didn't talk about in Cornerstone this past Sunday. Consider him, this is Jesus, who endured from sinners such hostility against himself, so that you may not grow weary or faint. So if you're experiencing hostility from others, just think about everything that Jesus experienced. He was, as Paul talks about in Philippians 2, he was obedient to the point of death, even death on a cross. So in your struggle, verse 4, against sin, you haven't yet resisted to the point of shedding your blood. You haven't yet been martyred the way that others have, and certainly the way that Jesus was. So therefore, look to those who went before you, who they were able to resist even up until that point, and take inspiration from them. Take inspiration from Jesus, from those who have run before you. You are able to run your race and run your race hard, throwing off the sin. Because Jesus is enabling that in us, enabling us to do that, and also because we can look at the example that he set and the examples that others set. We have not been asked to give our lives to be martyred in order to keep running in the race. They did, and if they can do that, then man, I also can continue to run this race. It's meant to be encouraging to us. Then we get to this part about discipline. For it is for discipline that you have endured. Or another translation says, endure hardships as discipline. God is treating you as children. This whole discipline thing. What does a loving parent do? A loving parent disciplines their kids. So often, if we want to get at some of the mysteries of the way that God relates with us, the closest that we can get is thinking about the metaphor of parenting children, that God is parenting us. A good, loving parent disciplines their children. Why? Well, we discipline our kids because sometimes we need them to understand something that they don't understand. Sometimes we need them to do something that they don't want to do. Sometimes we need them to care about something that they don't currently care about. If they don't currently care about their grades, but they do care about video games, then if you make video games contingent upon good grades, then all of a sudden, by extension, they care about their grades, right? So you discipline them, taking away the video games, that they might care about their grades. He says this word. A good, loving parent disciplines their kids. How is it that we can experience God's good discipline? Sometimes it's through prayer, and it's just that inner conviction that we feel. Sometimes it's through the words of the Scripture, where we realize that that our lives don't align with the teachings of Jesus, or the teachings of the apostles, or whatever it is. Sometimes it's through the words of somebody else who we trust, and we believe that they're seeking to live a faithful life, and we have to obviously always run that through a lens, and not everything that people say is always true, but that's a way in which I've experienced God's discipline in my life, is through a loving and a caring friend. But the big point is to see that the reason that we experience hardships at times, so talking about here, experience hardships as a form of discipline. The reason we experience hardships at times, sometimes it's not God's will that we're experiencing the hardship, and God walks us through that. But sometimes there's hardship that's in our lives that is a form of God disciplining us, to help us to care about things we don't care about, understand things we don't understand, do things that we don't want to do. And we should receive that discipline as a form of God's love. We look back and think, okay, all right, the reason my parents disciplined me is because they loved me. Not everybody has that story. I do. Good parents that discipline me because they love me. But even if that wasn't your story, you still get the metaphor. In the same way, God disciplines us because he loves us. Whirlwind, friends. That's a lot that's going on in just 17 verses. But I hope it gives you some idea of what's happening here. Keep with your reading. I'm going to see you one more time as we wrap up the book of Hebrews in a couple of days.